And now Russia has slammed presence of U.S. troops in Syria's Al-Tanf region, saying the illegal deployment is one of the reasons why displaced Syrians can't return home. Russia's foreign ministry spokeswoman says U.S. presence in the area impedes the fight against terrorism as well. Maria Zakharova says Washington is also preventing humanitarian aid to the displaced Syrians in Al-Rukban camp. She says it's necessary to facilitate the return of Syrian refugees to their homes. Zakharova says Moscow, though, is ready to help reconstruct Syria and create conditions for the return of the displaced back to their villages and towns. Joining us now out of Bristol, Mr. Tony Gosling, investigative journalist. Hello, Tony. Pleasure to have you back on the program. And now, Tony, so we've got a tug-of-war match on who's better for Syria and the displaced there, the U.S. or Moscow. Your thoughts, please.
Well, I mean, you have to ask the Syrian people, don't you, and the elected government of Syria who they want in there. It looks to me as if slowly but surely the Americans are being pushed out. Their intervention in Syria, which was really for their own interests, their own benefits, not to help the Syrian people. They've stayed too long. They're uninvited guests now. And effectively, they've lost. The British and the American attempt to overthrow Syria, like they did in countries like Libya, etc., has just gone. But the thing is that the British are like a bunch of spoilt brats at the moment. Because the Russians have beaten them, they're coming up with any silly excuse to have a go at Russia. On the press here in the last couple of days, we've had apparently it's a couple of drug addicts in Wiltshire in England that the Russians want to poison with nerve agents. These sorts of stories are really the last-ditch attempt really to face the facts. They've got to face the facts now that they've lost there. The US troops shouldn't be in Syria. They've got no United Nations mandate. They've got no mandate from the Congress. Does it benefit the United States, those troops still being there? No, it doesn't. In fact, we heard on the 3rd of April this year, Trump said that it doesn't benefit us at all. It's costing us billions, and we're going to bring the troops out. And if they want the troops to stay there, the Saudis are going to have to pay. Now, just after that, we had another chemical weapons incident. Also, there's the Yemen war, which is raging. And really the only reason for that is to prop up the Saudi royal family, which seems to be very, very fragile. And without the south of Saudi Arabia and Yemen in turmoil, there would probably be a real civil war there. So really, it's time for the Americans to leave. And the thing is, the last thing in the world is they don't want to admit defeat. I mean, in fact, that's where we are now.
And how much do you think, how big of a role do you think Tel Aviv plays in, imploring Washington to keep boots on the ground in Syria?
Well, yes, you've answered in a way the question I put, which is, does this benefit the United States? No, it doesn't. But it does benefit Israel. And I think we've seen over the last 30, 40 years a massive increase in the power and the strength of the Israel lobby. Every single congressman and woman now it seems to be in the hands of the Israel lobby. It's very difficult actually to get nominated to become a congressman, man or woman of either party, without getting the support of people like AIPAC, the Israel lobby, America-Israel Public Affairs Committee, is really interfering, it has to be said, in United States politics to a massive extent. But I think the military are now starting to push back. And there are people in the military, some of the people in the US military, who are saying, well, this is not benefiting us or anybody anymore, and it's just creating turmoil. So if it's a question of Trump versus Putin in Syria, if it ever comes to a fight, I think the Americans are going to get a bloody nose, actually. And the fact of the matter is nobody around that region thinks they should be there. The only way they're being, the only people convinced that they should stay are people who are being hypnotized by the Western media, who keep going on about, oh, well, only we can defeat ISIS. Well, actually, the fact of the matter is the Saudis, our allies, have been funding ISIS through Swiss bank accounts and through other covert means. So I think it's about time we left. Remember that Syria is such an important strategic country. It's the pivot of Asia, Africa, and Europe. And that's why all the big superpowers want their hands on it.
Tony, always a pleasure to get your perspective. Mr. Tony Gosling, investigative journalist, joining us out of Bristol.